Hello, I'm Chef David. Today we're making Sfincione, which is a Sicilian style deep dish pizza. The crust is focaccia-like, nice and fluffy. It has a tomato sauce that's spiked with anchovies and a ton of onions. And it's topped with a garlicky breadcrumb topping with pecorino cheese. Don't worry about remembering any ingredients or amounts. The recipe is in the description below. So let's get started making this delicious pizza. In this step, we're going to make the pizza dough. It's basically focaccia, and it's a very, very simple process. We're basically going to put all the ingredients into this stand mixer with a dough hook and mix it until the dough is nice and smooth and stretchy. All right, so the first step is going to be to add the water to the yeast, and I have some sugar in here also. I'm just going to add about 4 tablespoons or so. And what this does is this is going to start to activate the yeast. We're using a rapid rise yeast, which needs to be bloomed in some warm water before it's mixed into the dough. If you're using instant yeast, you can put it right into your dry ingredients. So while we're waiting for the yeast and sugar to bloom, we've got the flour, semolina, and salt in here, and we're going to put this into the stand mixer. I just give this a few spins just to kind of mix everything together. So after the yeast has bloomed out a little bit, we're going to add this to our semolina mixture and flour mixture. And we're going to turn it on, mix it a little bit. We're going to add our warm water. And at this point, we just want to give it a little bit of a stir to start incorporating those dry ingredients into the dough. And next, we're going to add our olive oil. From time to time, you want to scrape all of the ingredients that may have gathered on the sides of the bowl down into the bottom. Sometimes there's going to be a pocket of flour and other ingredients that gather at the very, very bottom. So you just want to make sure that those things get mixed into the dough. So it's been about 10 minutes or so. The dough is pulling away from the sides of the bowl. It's become very elastic and smooth. So at this point, we want to scrape the dough from the dough hook. Before we start proofing the dough, I always like to do a little trick, and that is to oil the entire bowl so the dough does not stick. And we're gonna want it to release very easily, because we're literally gonna be dumping this right into the pan that we're gonna be baking in. And the next step is to proof the dough. We've got it in a nice ball in the bottom. We've got plenty of oil so it's not sticking. We've got a little lid here. We're gonna put it in a warm spot for about an hour to an hour and a half. And now it's time to make the tomato sauce. This is a very straightforward recipe with the exception of one special ingredient. It's anchovies. This is something that would be best made the day before so it has a chance to cool down and all the flavors kind of meld together. If you're in a hurry, you can make it and put it in a shallow dish to put in the refrigerator so it cools down. You want it cold before you put it onto the pizza. So the ingredients for this tomato sauce are onions. We got the chopped onions, crushed tomatoes. These are organic tomatoes. I highly suggest you use organic tomatoes. Sliced garlic, our anchovies, and we're going to have some olive oil as well. Okay, first we're going to start by putting the olive oil into the saucepan. We want to start it on medium heat. We don't want it too high. We don't want to burn the onions and the garlic to start with. So once it comes up to temperature, we're going to add the onions, and then we're going to add the garlic. And we're going to stir it to coat everything with the olive oil that's inside. It shouldn't be a caramelized onion here. We're just looking to sweat the onions and garlic down. Now it's been sweating for about 10 to 15 minutes. You'll see that the onions and garlic are nice and translucent. So we're going to add the red pepper flakes, anchovies, and then we just want to stir with our wooden spoon to break up the anchovies and to kind of make them almost disintegrate into the onions and garlic. Oh, and I almost forgot the oregano. Now we're going to add the crushed tomatoes, and we want to get them incorporated with the rest of the ingredients. Stir those around, and you want to bring this up to a simmer. So you want to cook it for about 10 or 15 minutes or until the onions get super soft and the flavors kind of meld together. This isn't your typical pizza sauce with just some dried herbs and seasonings added to it. The onions and the anchovies really play a part in the complexity of the flavors. This also is a great sauce to use for pasta, so just because we're using it for the pizza doesn't mean you can use it elsewhere. So while we're waiting for the tomato sauce to simmer, let's check the dough to see how far it's risen. And now it looks like it's risen about a little bit under halfway, so we're going to let it sit for another 45 minutes or so. The sauce looks almost ready, but let's taste it for seasoning, just to make sure it's got enough salt and pepper. And it does. And now we're going to make the breadcrumb topping. I know breadcrumbs aren't a usual topping for pizza in the United States, but in Sicily, it's very traditional. And these are amazing breadcrumbs made with sweet Italian bread, pecorino cheese, olive oil, some garlic, some oregano. So last night I cut off the crusts of the bread. We sliced them and just let them dry overnight. This makes them nice and crumbly. Next, we're going to take them and crumble them with our fingers. You want the pieces to be small, but not very small and powdery. Next, we're going to make the seasoning for the breadcrumb mixture. We're going to start with some olive oil in a bowl. We're going to grate the garlic, season it with some salt and pepper, and add our oregano. I'm adding fresh oregano here. You can also use dry oregano as well. And now we're going to add our breadcrumbs, and we're going to give that a really good toss. We want to make sure that everything is coated with plenty of the olive oil mixture. Now it's time to add the cheese. We have about 4 ounces of medium grated pecorino cheese here. And now we're going to give that all a really good toss to make sure that the cheese is coated with the olive oil mixture as well. And we're all set. So now we're ready to go. The dough has more than doubled in size, and it's nice and poofy and soft. So now it's time to assemble the pizza. And it's also time to get your hands dirty. So this is the fun part. So we're going to start by drizzling olive oil, and we're actually doing this in a 12-inch cast iron skillet. I really like how the crust develops in the cast iron. It gets nice and crispy and crunchy. So we're going to cover the bottom pretty much with olive oil. We're going to season the bottom also. So we're going to do some salt, maybe just a little bit more. And we're going to add some cornmeal. This is white cornmeal. You can use yellow cornmeal. This will help it get really super crispy. And you don't need a lot, but you just want a nice little light coating on the bottom of your pan. Now you want to get your dough. And you're going to put your dough, just let it plop right out into the pan. The good thing is we don't have to knead this dough. So all we're going to do is just put some olive oil on our hands and just lightly press the dough into shape. And it should go there fairly easily if you've allowed the dough to proof properly. You want to get the dough right to the edges of the pan. Try to press it from the inside or the middle outwards so you can get a more fuller round there. So that's the dough. We're just going to use our fingers to kind of give it some pokes a little bit. And next it's time for our sauce. So we're going to do, you want to make sure that this pizza layer is really coated. We're not going to go skimpy on the sauce here. We want plenty of sauce. So we will have a little bit of sauce left over from that recipe. And you want to spread the sauce very close to the edge, but not quite, because you want to keep it from going underneath the pizza when it's baking. So all those yummy onions and garlic and everything. Wow, this is so nice. All right, so we got the sauce. It's a nice even coating. You don't see too much of the pizza dough underneath. If you do, you can always just add just a little bit more. But you want a good layer, and I would say that this is close to 1/4 inch of sauce. All right, then we are going to add our ricotta cheese. And this ricotta is from Bellwether Farms here in Northern California. It's just my favorite. So sweet naturally. You don't need to season it up. But if you your ricotta needs a little seasoning, just some salt and pepper is fine too. And we're just going to put some dollops on. I like having this instead of spreading it all out. It gives you kind of a nice surprise of ricotta in your bite. And lastly, we're going to add the breadcrumbs mixture. You want to make sure that the breadcrumbs are put on right to the edge of the pizza, all the way around. This is ready to go in the oven. Before we do that, I like to put it on the top of the stove with about medium heat to just to preheat the cast iron. You get a much crispier crust that way. You want to keep an eye on the pizza now. You don't want it to start to burn. About 5 or 7 minutes is probably enough. Once you start feeling the sides of the pan are pretty warm, then you can put it into the oven. Wow, this is a triumph. It smells so delicious. The garlic, the breadcrumbs, the cheese. It's going to be so good. Before we do that though, we're going to want to let it sit for about 20 more minutes, just so everything cools down a little bit and it becomes easier to slice. We can just use a regular chef's knife or a pizza wheel. It's a little bit easier to use a chef's knife in the cast iron skillet because of the sides. So first we want to just cut it in half, and then we're going to just cut a nice little pie-shaped wedge. There, it doesn't want to come out. Well, this is like the 5th take, so here we go again. Let's give this a taste. Maybe I did that on purpose, actually. It's so delicious. The breadcrumbs are so crunchy and garlicky. The ricotta cheese is so creamy, especially with that savory tomato sauce. I really hope you have a chance to make this. If you have any questions about the recipe, please leave them in the comments below. I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thanks so much for hanging out today. Hope you enjoyed it.